في كتير طرق وسط الحياة تاهوا فيها ناس وطرق تبان مفروشة ورد وتنتهي بألم وضيق، لكن الطريق للفرحة وطريق الخلاص عند المسيح. أصل المسيح هو الحياة، هو الطريق 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 الطريق
Welcome to The Wait TV, Wake Up America. I'm going to read some really explosive, actually obnoxious sexual stuff, but it's part of Sharia Islamic law. It's from Ayatollah Khomeini from the Little Green Book. I'll read for a couple of minutes and then we'll go to clips. We're going to see foreplay in China with the Uyghurs, which are the Muslims in China. And we're going to do a trip around the world showing all of the different Muslim groups and how every time Islam shows up, they always go sexual, crazy, perverted, and violent. Okay, from the Little Green Book by Ayatollah Khomeini. So that little boys and little girls in grammar school, if they want to copulate or fornicate because they get excited as little kids in grammar school, they can arrange a temporary marriage, which is a form of Sharia or Islamic law. In fact, temporary marriage in the United States, we call it prostitution. But the little kids want to get together and fornicate and copulate in the first grade, second grade, fourth grade. It doesn't matter. And they do not have to get permission from their parents. That's from Ayatollah Khomeini. Yes, I know he's a Shiite, but I also know that he adheres to the Sunnah, the tradition, in interpreting Islamic Sharia law. On fasting. Now, normally when we think of fasting, that we fast and we pray, we don't eat and we don't, and we pray. We don't eat, we pray. But under Ayatollah Khomeini and the Sunnah, the tradition of the Sharia or Islamic law, in chapter 17, I will read this word for word. Sexual intercourse is a breaking of the fast, even if the penis enters the vagina only as far as the circumcision ring, and even if no ejaculation results. Wow. I thought we were fasting. Okay, there's more. If the penis enters less deeply into the vagina and there is no ejaculation, the fast has not been broken. So I guess that's good news. So for the kids who are in the second and third grade, who want to fornicate and copulate and not get permission from their family, they can adhere to fasting of Ramadan by merely not ejaculating inside. Wow. Hey, I guess, teaching of the law in Western civilization is important, but as Islam takes over, then they're going to teach this stuff in grammar school? Well, frankly, with the insane stuff they're teaching in grammar school now to the kids, maybe there's not much difference. If the man cannot determine with certainty what length of his penis entered into the vagina, and if he has gone in beyond the circumcision ring, his fast has not been broken. That's pretty cool. If a man has intercourse because he has forgotten that he is in a fasting period, or someone forces him to have intercourse. So now, I got to tell you right now, as politely as I can, being a married man, my wife never has to force me to have intercourse. I'm a normal, healthy man with normal levels of testosterone. In fact, all of my friends who are manly men, I don't know one of them who has ever been forced to have intercourse. I've never met it. Perhaps this is a problem in the Islamic world. I'm just guessing. It's out of his book. If a man has intercourse because he has forgotten that he is in a fasting period, now how can you forget you're in a fasting period? I mean, you're probably going to be hungry, right? Or if someone forces him to have intercourse. So the guy's fasting, and his wife walks up to him and says, you know, I'm going to really beat the hell out of you if you don't have sex with me. Yeah, I've been involved in 11 federal lawsuits. I've sat on the witness stand. I've been deposed. I understand how the law works pretty good in the United States and Western tradition. This is a little unusual for me. Okay, continuing. The man's fast has not been broken. So, if on his own volition he wants to have sex with his wife, that's not okay. He's broken his fast. But I guess if his wife weighs 300 or 400 pounds and he only weighs 120 pounds, and she grabs him and throws him down and forces him to have sex, then the fast is not broken. That's really important that we all know that. His fast has not been broken. But if he remembers the fast while the sex act is taking place, or if he no longer forcibly constrained to complete the coitus, he must interrupt it immediately. This is Islamic law. This is, George Bush and Obama, Sheriff Baca, the LAPD. All of our leaders tell us that Islam is a great and peaceful religion. I'm merely telling you the nature or the will of Islam, because all law really is the nature or the will of the people, the particular group of people who adhere to it. It's the definition of common law. So the definition of common law in an Islamic country is what I'm reading right now, which to me seems like it's pretty much strange. If a man during a fasting period masturbates and brings himself to ejaculation, his fast has been broken. Well, I guess nobody has forced him to masturbate. He's done it of his own volition, and just as if he does sexual intercourse under his own volition and he's not forced to do it, then he's interrupted his fast. If a man ejaculates involuntarily, his fast remains valid. But if he himself does anything whatsoever to help along his involuntary ejaculation, the fast is considered to be null and void. Taking an enema, even for medically therapeutic reasons, breaks the fast, but the use of suppositories is not forbidden. However, it is preferable to abstain from using opium suppositories. Okay. All right. Can I get an Allah Akbar out of that? And by the way, all of the mosques, the major mosques in the United States are Muslim Brotherhood controlled, and they all adhere to the Sunnah. They all adhere to what I just read from Ayatollah Khomeini's little book. Even though he is a Shiite and he rejects the Sunnis, he does not reject the Sunnah. The Sunnah is the tradition of Muhammad. Okay, so now we're going to go around the world, and we're going to watch how Islam always goes into sexual frenzy and murdering people. This first group is in the Philippines, where the Abu Sayyaf, which is Arabic for the bearer of the sword, to cut people, well, the Abu Sayyaf is operated, and we have been fighting them for years, and the Abu Sayyaf, or their great-grandfathers, have been fighting continually in the Philippines for over 400 years. Okay, so clip number 3, we'll show clip number 3.
They came from the other side of the world for a holiday of a lifetime.
Do you know if our families are okay? Our families, they're okay.
12 hapless Europeans, they left home for a scuba diving adventure in the exotic Sulu Sea, framed between Malaysian Sabah and the Philippines. Instead, now, they're simply trying to survive in squalid conditions at the mercy of kidnappers.
Okay, you have something to say?
Yes.
we are again being attacked right now by the military, by the Philippine military. And this is the second time that we are under attack. You can hear the fire, the shooting, just within a short range. I don't know how far away it is. And we appeal to the United Nations and the entire world to make the Philippine army and the Philippine government stop this right now.
They're outsiders swept into the edges of a marathon war. It's been waged for almost 400 years. But these hostages, like so many in the outside world, probably knew nothing about it. Islam's fight for a place in Asia's Catholic heartland. They call themselves the Abu Sayyaf, bearer of the sword. A band of Muslim extremists with one hand on the Quran, the other brandishing a gun. They claim to be part of the push for a Muslim homeland here on the island of Mindanao, but in reality, they're the opportunistic fringe of that movement. They're kidnappers, ransom seekers. When they snatched the diving party and hotel workers from their Malaysian resort island of Sipadan and brought them here to the jungles of Holo in the Philippines, it sparked world attention and an assumption that this was an act of political terrorism.
There is this possibility that they might hurt the hostages in case there's a breakdown in our negotiation.
Okay, so now I was reading from the Ayatollah Khomeini and continuing on. Now this stuff's not quite insane, but if you understand how the law works, it really is insane. There's Khomeini writes, think of it a political clergy. Well, why not? The Prophet Mohammed was a politician. He, the Prophet Mohammed, appointed governors to provinces, formed tribunals and named judges, set up embassies in other countries and sent ambassadors to other tribes and kings. In short, all the normal functions of government. You see, Islam is, it's PMS, it's RPM, it's MPH. So PMS is power, money, and sex. RPM is religious, political, and military. You cannot separate the three. All three of them work together. They don't have a separation of mosque and state. And then MPH, Muslims per host. When the Muslims reach about 10% of the general population, then 100% of them join together. You no longer have the distinction of the false distinction of the moderate and the extremist Muslim. Then all 100% work together. And in fact, for those who still adhere to this false dichotomy of the moderate Muslim and the extremist Muslim, I would merely ask, okay, if we know 5% of all Muslims are radical Muslims, they want to fly airplanes into the World Trade Center, they want to follow this insane Sharia Islamic law where little boys and little girls can have consensual sex in grammar school without their parents' permission. These alleged moderate Muslims, could somebody please tell me, how do I know when they're no longer going to be moderate and they're going to explode and capture, kidnap, rape, kill, murder, as Major Nadal Hassan in the United States Army did years ago in Texas? Okay, so you have all these different groups who have all these different names. Abu Sayyaf is in the Philippines. The Uyghurs are in China. Boko Haram are in Nigeria. Al-Shabaab are in Somalia and Kenya. You have the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, Taliban in Afghanistan and Pakistan, in Iraq. You have Al-Qaeda, you have Iraq, Al-Qaeda all over the place. You have the Ikhwan Muslimin, which are the Muslim Brotherhood. But they all have one thing in common. It's all, they adhere to the little green book, Ayatollah Khomeini's Sunnah or tradition, the Sharia or Islamic law. That is their will, and when they talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, they don't like our constitution. The Quran and the Sunnah, the tradition, is their constitution. Okay, so in the Philippines, you have the Abu Sayyaf. China, you have the Uyghurs. In Iran, you have the Revolutionary Guard. And you have in Australia different groups, which I can't pronounce their names. I tried to do it. But all over the world, you have these people who actually adhere to these insane laws about fasting and sexual abnormalities, perversions, if you ask me. There's more that I really I'll try to do it next week. I'll locate those pages. Okay. I want to get to the clips. Clip number, Arbach, clip number 4.
Police in China say they are searching for at least 5 more people in connection with yesterday's attack at a train station. 29 people died when a group of assailants stormed the station. 4 of the attackers were also killed. Officials are blaming the violence on a separatist movement in the Muslim Northwest. Andrew Lee has the latest.
People gathered, mourning and lighting candles for the victims of the gruesome attack. Last night, nearly 200 people were either killed or injured. A sea of emergency vehicles crowded outside a railway station where more than 10 knife-wielding attackers hacked their way through travelers. One victim had his throat slashed while protecting his 6-year-old daughter. Doctors feverishly performed CPR, but the death toll kept growing. Victims crowded hallways of 10 hospitals. I feel pretty lucky to have been stabbed only once and be okay, says this man, because when I walked out of there, I saw 3 or 4 people lying there, not moving. This woman talked about her close call.
We didn't know what was going on, but the people in front of us started kneeling down, and we saw 2 people. One had a knife and was running towards us, stabbing wildly.
Still photos show police standing above one of the 4 suspected attackers who were shot dead. Police have a woman in custody, but a number of others escaped. Authorities are blaming Xinjiang separatists for this latest attack. The Xinjiang region is in the far west of China, over 1,000 kilometers from Kunming. It is the homeland for the Uyghurs, a predominantly Muslim people who have struggled against what they call an authoritarian and discriminatory rule from Beijing. China's leaders already have pledged to come down hard on the terrorists.
Okay, so the Uyghurs are in western China. What's happened is just to the west of the Uyghurs, or east of Pakistan and Afghanistan, you have this Chinese province there. And so missionaries from Pakistan and Afghanistan have gone east into China, and that's where you have all these problems. Just as during the height of the Ottoman Empire in the 1640s, the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Muslims were attacking Europe, specifically what was used to be called Yugoslavia. Today it's Kosovo, Albania, and Bosnia. The Sochi Olympics around the Crimea and that area there were all conquered by the Ottoman Turks, who were the Muslims. And again, in those areas, all you have is violence. Remember, during the Olympics, they were very concerned, and the Russians, Putin, had to send in all kinds of soldiers in there to hold them down. The rule of the clergy in the Little Green Book, the Sunnah, the religion, and the law are wrapped together in one. Khomeini, which the Muslim Brotherhood, again, which controls almost 100% of the major mosques in the United States, which adheres to these thinking patterns that if you're Muslim, you are superior to the kafir, the infidel, that you are a human being if you're Muslim. Non-Muslims are the same as dogs, monkeys, and pigs. And so that under Islamic or Sharia law, you have a bifurcation where justice is meted out or measured out in accordance with what your religious beliefs are, which we've shown on a number of clips here. So this stuff has far-reaching applications to us every day. For example, if say I am out with my wife and a Muslim assaults my wife or my daughter and I fight back, under Islamic Sharia law, then I'm the guilty party. Self-defense is not permitted. The Muslim's allowed to beat the hell out of you and rape your wife and all this other stuff. And if it goes to a trial, then especially if the jurors, the 12 jurors and the 2 substitutes or alternates, if they're all Muslims, they will all support the Muslim who assaulted my wife, and I'm found guilty if I defending her, I injure the Muslim. And we've shown that a number of times. That's how Sharia law works. The rule of the clergy. If religious experts of wisdom and justice devoted themselves to the Islamic law and to setting up an Islamic law and to setting up an Islamic state, never again would the people go hungry. And yet we know in the 57 Muslim countries throughout the world, the vast majority, 54 of those Muslim countries, they have adverse poverty and hunger and problems, and all of their laws, their fundamental laws, their constitutions are all based on the Sunnah, the Sharia law of the Ayatollah Khomeini. It is written that the clergy rule the sultans, or the presidents, the prime ministers, the kings, the mayors, the congressmen, the senators. It is written that the clergy rule the civil authorities, the sultans. If the sultans, the civil authorities, are obedient to Islam, then they should also be obedient to the clergy. So in other words, the clergy are over the top of the civil magistrate. Now in the Bible, it's not that way. If you read Romans 13, actually, God ordains the civil magistrate to be the minister of God, and he is supposed to operate under the authority of the Ten Commandments as codified, or as written, or as reduced down to equity, which means fairness or justice or the golden rule under our type of law. It does not work that way in Islam. Remember, if you are not Muslim, then you're basically a dog, a cow, or a pig. It doesn't matter what they do to you. You're a legal non-person under Islamic law. If you don't believe me, ask the people who are in the studio who fled from Iraq and Egypt and whatnot. If the sultans are obedient to Islam, then they should also be obedient to the clergy. They should ask the clergy for laws and regulations and advice on how to apply them. In this way, the clergy are the real leaders and power belongs to them officially. This is Islamic Sharia law as practiced in Saudi Arabia and the different countries. And you will notice in Saudi Arabia, they have horrible problems with beating of women. They won't let them drive cars and all these other things. This is exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan Muslimin, wants to do in the United States. This is why the election in Egypt with General Sisi was so important. We don't think it's important because we're Americans, and we happen to be ethnocentric. It's natural. All people are ethnocentric to a certain degree. You can't get away from it. But in Egypt for some reason, well, they have Al-Azhar University, and they're considered to be the benchmark or the paradigm for Sharia law throughout the world. The Egyptians in the Muslim world are probably the most influential. So General Sisi coming in and winning the election now, the Muslim Brotherhood are gone. They're there, but many of them have been arrested. Many of them have been killed. And frankly, when dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan Muslimin, they do what would Satan do, what the same as Mohammed did. What did Mohammed do? Well, Mohammed, we know, was a pedophile, a child molester. He was a murderer. He was a pervert. He had sex with a dead woman. He had sex with a 6-year-old girl. He did all these crazy things. And under Islamic law, that's good. That's why I'm reading this stuff. And again, Americans, Europeans, people of the West who love liberty, this is growing rapidly, the power. What you see in Europe, these people captured that we just showed the clip in the Philippines, or these people in China, the Chinese, they're just killing the Muslims because they know they've fought them for hundreds and hundreds of years and they just don't put up with it anymore. You, the clergy, have the duty to establish an Islamic state. That would be all of the mosques in the United States. Almost all, in fact, I'm convinced, all are controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. The Ikhwan Muslimin, who are outlawed by General Sisi in Egypt and also by the Saudi Arabians. He goes on to say, have confidence in yourselves. You are perfectly capable of assuming that burden. We will do as in the colonialists did 300 or 400 years ago. They started from nothing and got to that point. And then he goes on, because religion and politics should not be separate. Now, under our separation of church and state, The clergy is not authorized in the Bible to go in and control a state, and the state is not there to go into the sphere of the church. The two do work together. The two do get their authority and the ordination from God. They get their authority from the Ten Commandments. Common law in the West, since Jesus Christ, has been based on the Ten Commandments. That's easy to prove. Now, today's intellectuals will throw that out because they're chronological ethnocentrists. They're selfish, self-centered people who seem to think because we have technology that we are superior to the morality of years gone by. But as I point out to everyone, all technology is controlled by morality. If you technologically make a hammer, that hammer is controlled by morality. You can use that hammer to build a house to help people. That is moral. Or you can take that hammer like the Hell's Angels and you can crush somebody's skull and kill them. So technology always comes down to morality. A clock that keeps time is a wonderful thing so that we can have our appointments, we can take our medicine on time, we can watch television programs on time, we can run businesses, we can go on the bus or on a train or an airplane, and it makes life really a lot easier. But a clock can also be used as a time bomb. Every technological device used, whether it was 6,000 years ago or at this moment, whether it's Facebook or the movable type of the Gutenberg press, all comes down to how are you going to handle that technology? Are you going to use it morally or immorally? Are you going to slander and defame and libel people and gossip and ruin them by using Facebook or the media, as the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center does? Or are you going to use technology to talk about how you can help protect boys and girls in grammar school who want to have sex according to Ayatollah Khomeini and the Sunnah, the tradition, the Sharia law? It's okay. Have we really come that far from the times of Gilgamesh and the times of the pyramids? Aren't we still operating under morality? We always have. And that's why God wrote the law on the heart as codified in the Ten Commandments, as digested in the two great commandments, to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And similar to that, to love your neighbor as yourself. Upon this rests all the law and prophets. If you look at Lady Justice, she holds two implements. She holds the scales of justice, which is based on equity, the golden rule. You put yourself on one side of the pan to balance out with how you want to be treated or how you treat other people. It's really simple. It's profound. It's in our nature. Of all the creatures God has made, only mankind has been granted this wonderful gift. This gift of feeling, gee, guilt. What I just said injured that person. The way I just drove injured that person. I feel bad. Dogs, cats, and pigs don't feel that way. Under Sharia law, there is no equity. There is no golden rule. There is no fairness. There is only this insane Sharia Sunnah law. All right, let's go back and we'll take a look at how the law works in Iran. And you will see some pretty ugly stuff. Okay, clip number 8. Clip number 8.
Jag hatar den bilen. Jag studerade i universitetet i södra Iran. En imam sa att jag ska alla kvinnor bära långslöja. Jag ville inte. Varför? Och jag protesterade. Efter en vecka patrullen kom igen och gripade mig och de dömde mig 3 års fängelse. Efter 2 år de sa att vi ska prata med dig och de börjar slå mig och de var 3 man. De bröt min ben. De våldtäckte ursäkta mig. De 5 gånger de våldtagde mig. Efter 2 dagar de hämtade mig till sjukhus i fängelse. Efter 15 dagar jag såg larv i såret.
Så när du kom ut fängelset, hur såg du på islam?
Islam är äckligare.
Islamic Sharia Sunnah law as being taught in all of the mosques in the United States, Western Europe, Canada, Mexico, Philippines, China, South Korea, all over the world. Branch, UK, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. That's what you see in there. That's how Islam works. Ladies, you are the first to be brutalized. You are the first to be subjugated. You are the first to suffer. You are the most to suffer. And what happened to that woman right there, if you stand up as an American or a Canadian or a Western European woman, if you stand up, that's what will happen to you. I've been married 43 years. I have never hit a woman in my life. I never will hit a woman in my life. I will not do it. I've been a lot. Marine Corps, 9 years. I've been in a lot of fist fights there, no problem. I will never hit a woman. But under Islam, that's the first thing to do. They beat the hell out of the women. I'm going to show a clip back to China again. Chinese Muslim foreplay. In certain cases, deception is necessary for the maintenance of Islam and of religion in general. Without it, faith could not survive. Again, from Ayatollah Khomeini, an expert on Sharia common law. If anyone in the guise of pursuing Islamic justice interprets a law in a manner contrary to the divine will, he has committed the sin of innovation. So if I step in as a Christian man and I see a Muslim is going to beat the hell out of a woman, wife, child, whatever, and I stop it, that is an innovation, and I am, under Islamic law, the sinner. Learned men of Islam are bound to condemn him, or they will themselves be condemned. So they do believe in silence is consent. Given that the clergy occupy a lower position than the prophet of the imam, should they therefore punish an offense less severely? Can we say that the prophet ought to order 150 lashes, whip people, Ali 100 lashes, and the clergy only 50, in a case when the penalty should be 100 lashes? No! The chief magistrate possesses executive power that is always in accordance with divine standards, whether he be the prophet, Ali, or the duly constituted representative. There is no 10 commandments in Islam. There is no 2 great commandments to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and similar to that, to love your neighbor as yourself. There is no concept that the golden rule exists, and the law is not based on love. In Christianity, love is the fulfilling of all law. Not in Islam, because it's satanic. Let's watch how a husband seduces his wife in China. Clip number 7. Clip number 7.
Yapma! Ben iğrayaq cinim sayı. Bana işiniz ağırsın. Bana uval kımang. Bana tövmet kılan.
Hele bakayım ha!
Bana uval kımang.
Sen bu şikayetlerimle beni aldırmadı adamsa?
Kuda aldı da kasam kıpazama birey.
Hey!
Benim orada
Gel gitsene yardımcı mı? Ne istemem ben?
Bana uval kımang.
Hey gel geldir sen o! Çıkamam! Çıkar! Çıkar!
Ben özümge
Hele bakayım ayağını bekip gitsene değil mi? Çıkarmışmam sen!
Hırmızı tövmet.
Çıkarmışmam sen! Çıkar! Bana!
Yak! Yak sayı yak! Yak!
Git ayağıma sıçmama! Bıt! Yok be!
Sayı!
Can I say? It's Islam. All, you know, I'm not a prophet. I am predicting. I can tell everything that I'm talking about today, people are saying, wow, this guy is really off the edge. Really? 14 centuries of Islam, 1,400 years of Islam, watching what's going on in Afghanistan, Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in China, in Australia, all over the world. Is there anybody with cognitive ability that could possibly agree with George W. Bush and Obama when they say Islam is a peaceful, wonderful religion that has helped everybody? And then they point back to the 700-year rule in Spain called the Golden Years of Andalusia. Well, it was the golden years for the Muslims. For 700 years, they went out and they captured, kidnapped, raped, and just generally just abused the heck out of the Spaniards. Very interesting. Very fascinating. All right. Let's see what the Muslims do in Australia. Clip number 11.
Good evening and welcome to 10 News. The violent anti-US protests that shut down Sydney, turning the city's streets into a bloody battlefield, have been condemned by leaders on all levels.
6 police officers and 17 others were injured when the demonstration spiralled into chaos. 6 men were charged, 1 faced court today. 10's Gabrielle Boyle was there. Gabby, good evening to you. Who is this man?
Well, Ahmed Almar is tonight behind bars after a magistrate refused him bail. He will return to court on Tuesday. We are learning a few more facts about one of the men that police allege was involved in yesterday's violent scenes in Sydney's CBD. We now know he was a father of 3, a married man and a working man. We heard in court today, however, that he did have a criminal record. Here's how the day unfolded in court.
10 News cameras capture Ahmed Elmore at the very centre of yesterday's violent CBD riots. But the 29-year-old claimed in court today he was an innocent bystander, pushed, shoved and caught up in a case of over-policing. The married father of 3 is a former professional boxing champion.
Ahmed Trigger Elmore!
They freak out a bit because I've never seen a Lebanese cowboy before, you know.
Elmar's supporters, some of who attended yesterday's protest, were in court as he was refused bail. The magistrate citing his 6-page-long criminal record, which includes assault, malicious damage and repeated convictions for driving while disqualified.
Now, under Sharia Islamic law, they don't have a First Amendment. There's 4 parts to the First Amendment. Number 1, religion. Number 2 is speech. Number 3 is press. Number 4 is for the people to peaceably assemble to petition the government for redress of grievances. It is our ability to be able to peaceably assemble to petition the government for redress of grievances that has made America the magnet for the whole world that likes liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there you will find liberty. Even though we know, those of us who've lived here for 63 years, that our liberties are vanishing and disappearing quickly under the hegemony of the bureaucracies that have grown like fungi out of the executive department, executive, legislative, and judicial, out of the executive branch of the government, created to be miracle workers like the Department of Justice. It's interesting, the Department of Justice was formed in 1789, but had no department until almost 100 years later in 1870. Fascinating. The Department of Justice today, as you look through like the ABTF and the ATF and the FBI, all these different organizations, when these bureaucracies start, they all begin to solve problems. But we also know that when we have regulatory agencies like the police or the sheriffs or Drug Enforcement Administration, these things start with a good intent. This bureaucracy always starts like the Veterans Administration, the IRS, the Bureau of Land Management. These bureaucracies grow as fungi out of the executive department, allegedly to help, the welfare clause, to help we the people. Soon, however, being a student of bureaucracies, we find out that a bureaucracy turns into a Frankenstein, begins creating unlawful laws and regulations not in accordance with protecting the will of the people, the freedom of the people, not in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, and not in accordance with their originating organic declaration creating that bureaucracy. No. As in the BLM going up there and beating up and harassing, sicking dogs and tasering the people up there in Nevada, allegedly to protect tortoises, which is nonsense. We've proved that's nonsense. These bureaucracies always get out of control, just as a Veterans Administration. Having spent 9 years in the Department of Defense, the Bureau of the Navy called the United States Marine Corps, I can tell you from 9 years of experience, my father being in the Marine Corps, my son being in the United States Army, it's a bureaucratic conveyor belt. If you're on the conveyor belt and you are going in the direction of the belt, you're okay. But once you begin to petition that bureaucracy for a redress of grievances, as I did as an officer in the United States Marine Corps, you will find out that that bureaucracy becomes a huge gear grinding people, human lives, and everything up, which is exactly what the BLM did in Nevada, and it's exactly why I went up there under the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, and I stood there face to face with a heavily armed BLM who I can tell you wanted to shoot us. They were dressed like they were going into combat in Iraq or Afghanistan. But we had the ability to petition the government for redress of grievances. It worked beautiful. That is probably the cornerstone of America, the First Amendment. 4 different concepts, 4 different rights and duties. You have the right to the freedom of speech, but you have the duty that you cannot falsely cry fire in a crowded theater. You have the right of the freedom of press, but you have a duty that you cannot slander, defame, and libel. You have the right that you can peaceably assemble to petition the government for redress of grievance, but you have a duty to keep it peaceful. But the very first one is the freedom of religion. And in that freedom of religion, you have a duty that the religion you adhere to has to have the morality. How are you going to use that hammer to build a house or crush a skull? That you have the morality. When you have a clock, are you going to use it to tell time, to have airplanes land and take off at the correct time? Or are you going to make time bombs out of it? You have the right and the duty under the First Amendment, the freedom of religion, only to be a peaceful religion, a religion based on doing unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Anytime a religion becomes dangerous in its theology, its ideology, its philosophy, that religion is not permitted to exist. This is very difficult for Americans to understand today. Sheriff Baca and the LAPD and most of the sheriffs and the police throughout the United States think that the First Amendment is absolute. It is absolutely not absolute. I just went through all 4. Speech. You cannot falsely cry fire in a crowded theater. Press, you cannot slander, defame, or libel. Freedom to peaceably assemble to petition the government for redress of grievances. You cannot riot, war, burn down houses, rape, kill, brutalize people. You cannot do that. And under religion, we are free to have a religion as long as it's peaceful and it's sane. Islam is not peaceful and it is not sane. And that's the basis of this whole show, to wake up America. The only true teacher to reach through to enough Americans to get us to understand how volatilely, satanically dangerous Islam is the behavior of the Muslims themselves. And that's why I show the clips. All these clips are unabridged. They're not edited. They are showing Islam based on what did Satan do, what did Muhammad do. And that's why I'm reading this law. Under Sharia law, under the Ayatollah Khomeini, you are not allowed to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The person who governs the Muslim community must always have its interests at heart and not his own. This is why Islam has put so many people to death. This is why Islam has murdered so many people, to safeguard the interests of the Muslim community. Islam has obliterated many tribes because they were sources of corruption and harmful to the welfare of Muslims. Muslims are forbidden to seek redress of their grievances from the executive or judiciary of improperly constituted governments. Let me read that again. Under Islam, Muslims are forbidden to seek redress of their grievances from the executive or judiciary or improperly constituted governments. So, if the Muslims want to rape and kidnap and kill the kafirs, the Christians, the Jews, the non-Muslims, they are allowed to do that. Sheriff Baca, clip number 14. Clip number 14.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. I'm deeply regretful that I cannot be with you this evening. As you listen to my message, I'm either in Qatar, Abu Dhabi, or Egypt, meeting with my Arab law enforcement colleagues. We are working on strategies of cooperation, public safety, and education.
Okay, now that's Sheriff Baca, and he is addressing the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan Muslimin, not just in California, but globally. And what he is doing is actively aiding and abetting the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan Muslimin, because he has a faulty understanding of the First Amendment. Sheriff Baca, next week I will show the clip where he brags and toots his horn that as the sheriff of Los Angeles, his duty is to uphold the First Amendment, which it is. But Sheriff Baca believes that the First Amendment is absolutely absolute, which is absolutely false. And he doesn't understand, according to him, he will agree with me that you cannot falsely cry fire in a crowded theater. He will agree with me that you cannot go to the press and slander, defame, and libel. And he will agree with me that if you're going to assemble to petition the government for a redress of grievance, you have to do it peaceful. But he disagrees with me, and he thinks that any religion is allowable in the United States, even if the religion is the First Baptist Church of Cannibals, where every Sunday they congregate together, they sacrifice a kid on the altar, and then they devour the remains of the kid. Now, Sheriff Baca, if I gave him that example, he would agree with me. But if I began explaining to him how dangerous Islam is by its very DNA, the nature of its law, as Ayatollah Khomeini posits in his little green book, as we go through Sharia law, as we go through all of the devastations of Islamic law, Sheriff Baca will not agree with me, because Sheriff Baca believes that Islam is inherently good. Sheriff Baca believes that Islam is from the triune God, not from Satan, not from the devil. It is very disturbing for me as a student of the law, the formation of Anglo-American common law. It is very disturbing for me to try to talk to Sheriff Baca or the LAPD who think that their job is to protect Satanists who want to kidnap, to rape, to brutalize, and murder girls as the Boko Haram did in Nigeria. I have made a clip on this, and so we will show clip number 15. Clip number 15.
Most Americans believe it's un-American to regulate or prevent religion in America from existing. Let's flip it. If the religion is un-American, is dangerous, can the First Amendment regulate it? Islam means submit. So a Muslim, Islam's verb, to Muhammad. What would Muhammad do? A good Muslim, Islam's verb, to Islam, does what Muhammad, the perfect man in Islam, would do. Muhammad is the paradigm example for proper behavior. So, should Islam be regulated or prevented depends on what would Muhammad do. Muhammad married a 6-year-old girl and had sex with her when she was 9. Muhammad lied, murdered, assassinated, beat his wives to have sex. See the Quran, Surah 434. Muhammad got his men by buying them with power, money, and sex. Muhammad, Islam, never mention the golden rule, just the opposite. Do unto others before they do unto you is a central message of what would Muhammad do. Keeping it simple, Muhammad developed his PMS, religion, power, money, and sex, and it has become an RPM religion, religious, political, and military. If you wish to be a good Muslim, then do what Muhammad did. You become RPM, religious, political, and military. So when you Islam, verb, to Islam, you may marry 6-year-old girls, lie, assassinate, beat your wife to have sex, etc. Consider history. History proves our government must regulate the First Amendment. It's not absolute. Schenck versus United States, 1919. The government must regulate dangerous speech and assembly. We cannot falsely cry fire in a crowded theater, and history proves that churches can be regulated. Reynolds versus the United States. Utah, a Mormon territory, was not granted statehood until the LDS gave up polygamy. History proves that Christian denominations that will not allow transfusions for their children, that the state must step in and regulate this, saving the life of the child. Again, for safety's sake. Is this un-American? No. History also regulates Southwest U.S. Indian tribes from using peyote hallucinogenic drugs in their ceremonies. Un-American? No. Is regulating Islam and regulating the building of a mosque un-American? No. 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 I am the infidel, I am the kafir, and I'm mighty proud of it.
Okay, so from Khomeini and those who adhere to Islam, what did Muhammad do? Sharia law, the law of Islam, the will of the people. Beating the hell out of women is okay. Destroying and ruining kafirs, non-Muslims, is okay. Raping your wife is okay. If your wife is not capable physically of having sex because she has some kind of a physical malady, you are allowed to beat her, pummel her, and throw her out of the house, which you saw in the clip. This is all confirmed in the Quran. The verses are 3:32, 3:132, 4:13, 4:59, 4:69, 5:92, 8:1, 8:20, 8:46, 9:71, 24:47, 24:51, 24:52, 24:54, 24:56, 33:33, 47:33, 49:14, 58:13, 64:12, 68:4, and 33:21. In Islam, you have the highest degree of hostility, disorder, slavery, and misogyny ever known to mankind in the history of the world. Under Christianity, under the 10 Commandments, the 2 great commandments, the golden rule, love is the fulfilling of all law. You have the highest degree of peace, order, liberty, and prosperity ever known to mankind. Clip number 5, Hamsa.
56 people have been killed in rioting in western China. It's being described as the worst ethnic unrest in the region in decades. National correspondent Catherine Harridge has the story.
China's state-controlled media portrayed the violence in Xinjiang as part of a concerted campaign by the Muslim Uyghurs to terrorize the Han Chinese. Chinese women were shown repeatedly covered in blood, apparently in shock, as violence swept through the capital, Urumqi. At one hospital, this young Chinese woman claims she was beaten by the demonstrators on her way home from work. Uyghur exiles say the demonstrations were part of a youth movement which used the internet and blogs to organize a peaceful protest after Uyghur migrant workers were beaten and killed by the Chinese. The protest became bloody, they say, only after the communist regime cracked down. The use of the internet and social networking sites is a striking parallel between these demonstrations and those in Tehran last month.
It is Chinese government's.
And we'll finish on this one in Austria, by Bavaria, by Germany. In Austria, in their Congress, watch how the Austrians respond to kicking out the Muslim ambassador. Clip number 12. Number 12.
Hier Ewald Stadler vom BZÖ. Herr Bundesminister bringt zunächst einen Antrag ein, und zwar im Wissen darüber, dass diese Debatte wahrscheinlich nirgends so genau verfolgt werden wird wie in der türkischen Botschaft. Daher im Wortlaut. Der Herr Bundesminister für europäische und internationale Angelegenheiten wird ersucht, den türkischen Botschafter Kadri Ecevit Deschan mit sofortiger Wirkung zur persona non grata zu erklären und damit dessen Abberufung zu verlangen. Meine sehr geehrten Herren von der türkischen Botschaft, und ich werde jetzt nicht so devot wie der Kollege van der Bellen sein und von
Okay, so I want to end on this note. Under Christianity, under our Western tradition, the overarching purpose of education is to transmit the wisdom of our ancestors to every child, that we might all live in a land with the highest degree of peace, order, liberty, and prosperity, period. We have proved that for 6,000 years of recorded history. Wherever the bloody banner of Jesus Christ goes, and people adhere to the 10 Commandments, the 2 great commandments, the golden rule, love is a fulfilling of all law, we, the people, live in a land with the highest degree of peace, order, liberty, and prosperity. Under Islam, Sharia, Ayatollah Khomeini, Sunnah, tradition, law. The overarching purpose of education is to send boys only to madrasas, Muslim schools, to beat them to memorize the Quran, and then send them throughout the world as little Mohammeds to transform the whole globe into 7th century Saudi Arabia, thereby creating the highest degree of hostility, disorder, slavery, poverty, and misogyny known to mankind. Thank you very much for watching the show. We'll be on next week, and we're going to expose the LAPD and the LA sheriffs how they are actively aiding and abetting the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States with proof, evidence, and facts, not nonsense. Adieu.
في كتير طرق وسط الحياة تاهوا فيها ناس، وطرق تبان مفروشة ورد وتنتهي بألم وضيق، لكن الطريق طريق